They told her it was a compliment, that she was so articulate, that she was not like the others, that she had class. They said it with smiles, with handshakes, with applause. But Wanda Sykes knew exactly what they meant. She always did. Because the moment you grow up black in America, you learn to hear what's being said in between the words. You learn to read tone, like survival. Because sometimes, what sounds like praise is really just a reminder that you don't belong. Not fully. Not really. Wanda didn't grow up angry. She grew up observant, quietly cataloging the world's double standards. How a black kid with confidence is aggressive, but a white kid with the same is a leader. How her hair, her voice, her presence, all of it had to be softened, edited, made palatable. Even as a child, she could feel the weight of expectation press against her skin. Be smart, but not intimidating. Be funny, but not too real. Be excellent, but never make them uncomfortable. She played along for a while, like so many do, laughed when they laughed, bit her tongue when they said the wrong thing, smiled when someone said, "You don't act black," like that was a badge of honor. She didn't push back, not at first, because when you're a black woman trying to move through white spaces, you learn to pick your battles. You learn that survival often means silence. But silence has a cost. And Wanda was paying it in pieces of herself. The shift didn't come all at once. It came in cracks, a joke that landed too hard, a question that went too far, a moment backstage when someone mistook her for the help. It came every time she felt herself shrinking to make others feel safe. And one day, she stopped shrinking. She stepped on stage and made them see it. The absurdity, the rage, the contradiction of being asked to represent a race while being treated like an exception. She said it plainly. Don't tell me you don't see color, because if you don't see color, then you don't see me. It wasn't a punchline, it was a reckoning. And that's when the real work began. Not on stage, inside. Because being funny doesn't erase pain. Being successful doesn't erase racism. And being seen doesn't always mean being understood. Wanda had to face what she had buried beneath the laughter. The times she let things slide. The moments she stayed quiet. The wounds she covered with sarcasm. She had to stop performing for their comfort and start speaking for her own sanity. She didn't want to become the spokesperson for race in comedy. But she also knew that ignoring it would be a betrayal, not just of herself, but of every girl who looked like her, every woman who was told to calm down, to lighten up, to stop playing the race card. Wanda didn't carry a card. She carried history. In her bones, in her skin, in every room she walked into where she was the only one, and they expected her to represent millions. She never signed up for that job, but the world gave it to her anyway. She started talking about it on stage, not in anger, but in clarity. She talked about the time her friend's white husband said, "I don't even think of you as black," like that was something to be proud of. She turned that moment into a joke. But beneath the laugh, you could feel the sting. Because what they were really saying was, "I only respect you because I've decided you're an exception, and exceptions aren't respected. They're used." Wanda turned these moments into stories, stories into jokes, jokes into mirrors, and she made people look, not with guilt, with truth. That's harder, because guilt fades. Truth lingers. It disrupts. It scratches at you days later when the laughter is gone and you're left sitting in what she actually said She wasn't interested in applause if it meant biting her tongue. She wanted the kind of laugh that came with a wince, the kind that forced you to ask yourself why you laughed in the first place. She once joked that she didn't like having to explain racism to white people anymore, that it wasn't her job to teach them how to treat her like a person, that it was exhausting to have to prove racism exists while also surviving it. That's the thing no one talks about, the emotional labor, the performance inside the performance, the way even your anger has to be carefully curated, palatable, just enough to make a point, but not enough to make them defensive. And yet, Wanda refused to water herself down. Over the years, her voice grew sharper, not just in tone, but in focus. She began to carve space with her words, space for contradiction, for pain, for strength, for joy that didn't rely on approval. She didn't want to be liked. She wanted to be heard. She wanted to be real. And in that decision, she found something far more powerful than acceptance. She found freedom. It didn't come from outside. It came from within. From the moment she stopped laughing to protect them. From the moment she started telling the truth without checking the room. From the moment she realized she didn't need to perform blackness in a way that made white people feel safe. That realization didn't make her life easier. It made it harder. Doors that had once been open started to close. People who claimed to admire her suddenly found her too political. Invitations stopped coming. Offers dried up. Not because she lost her talent, but because she had stopped filtering it through their comfort. That's what people mean when they say, "Stay in your lane." What they really mean is, stay in your place. And Wanda had no intention of doing that. She had always known what her place was. It was on stage, with a mic, with her truth. She had earned it. Every hour in a room full of men who didn't hear her. Every show in towns where her skin made her a target. Every audition where she was asked to be more urban. Every note that told her to change her hair, change her tone, change her... She took every insult and made it part of the act, not for laughs, but for power. She controlled the narrative. And in that control, she reclaimed every moment someone tried to diminish her. But there's a weight that comes with that power. The weight of always having to be on, always having to carry the message, to represent, to educate, to hold space. It wears you down. And Wanda has been honest about that too. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the toll of never being allowed to just be human, of being politicized without permission. She didn't choose to be a symbol. She just refused to lie. And in a world addicted to pretending, that made her dangerous. She once said she gets tired of talking about race, not because it's not important, but because it's relentless. It's everywhere. It's in the way people look at you when you walk into a store. It's in the way you're treated at airport security. It's in the way your child is disciplined at school. It's in the jokes that aren't really jokes. And the worst part isn't that it happens. The worst part is that you're supposed to pretend it doesn't. To move on. To be the bigger person. To smile through it. Wanda stopped smiling. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. She still laughed. But the laugh came with teeth. It came with memory. It came with warning. Because when you've lived inside the contradiction long enough, you stop needing to explain it. You just start naming it. And that's what she did. She named it. The hypocrisy. The fear. The myth of post-racial America. She ripped off the polite veneer and showed people the raw wood underneath. Splintered. Unfinished. Still waiting to be rebuilt. And in doing that, she gave others permission to do the same. To stop pretending. To stop softening. To speak without code. to exist without apology. That permission became her quiet legacy, not written in awards or headlines, but in the echoes she left behind. In the comics who stopped watering down their sets, in the writers' rooms that started listening, in the black girls who saw her speak her truth and believed, maybe for the first time, that they could too. Wanda Sykes didn't just open doors, she reminded you that the room was already yours, you just had to stop asking to be let in. Still, the cost didn't disappear. Every truth-teller knows the sting of being misread, of being reduced to angry, as if rage can't coexist with brilliance, as if fury isn't earned, as if she woke up one day and chose confrontation for fun. They called her divisive, but they never asked what it feels like to live divided every day between who you are and what the world insists you be. She was tired of explaining it, so she started exposing it. In one stand-up, she talked about the mental gymnastics of moving through white spaces, the constant code switching, the need to preempt discomfort, the fear of being the wrong kind of black, too loud, too honest, too much, and how exhausting it is to live under that microscope, where even your tone is a threat, where your success is questioned, where your existence is a performance being judged. She turned that exhaustion into rhythm, into timing, into craft. But it didn't make it any less real. She still had to deal with the people who praised her, but didn't hear her, who clapped at the joke, but flinched at the meaning, who said, "You're my favorite black comedian," not realizing how deeply that sentence reveals them. She smiled through some of those moments early on, until she didn't, until she chose the silence that speaks louder. The pause, the look, the refusal to soften the blow. That's how she reclaimed her space, not by yelling, not by begging, by standing still and letting her presence speak for itself, by owning her perspective without disclaimer, by letting the world adjust to her instead of the other way around. That's power. Not the ability to make people laugh, but the courage to make them listen, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it is. And through it all, she stayed sharp, not just funny precise. Her comedy became scalpel-like, slicing through the hypocrisy, exposing the nervous laughter. She wasn't afraid of silence anymore. She welcomed it, because silence, when earned, isn't empty. It's charged. It means the message landed. It means someone's defenses cracked. It means they're finally hearing something that's been said 1,000 times, but never like this. Wanda Sykes never set out to be a revolutionary. She didn't write manifestos. She didn't march with signs. She stood in front of a microphone and told the truth. And somehow, that was more radical than anyone expected, because truth, when spoken without apology, becomes dangerous, especially when it comes from someone they've tried to laugh past, look over, explain away, especially when it comes from a black woman who refuses to perform respectability just to be heard. She didn't offer comfort, she offered clarity, the kind that lingers, the kind that doesn't go down easy, because she understood something most people spend a lifetime avoiding, that the need to be accepted will always keep you small. That real power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being undeniable. And she became undeniable. Not because the system wanted her, but because she stopped asking for its approval. She built her own rhythm, her own voice, her own space, one joke at a time, one truth at a time. Until the stage wasn't just a platform, it was a battlefield, a church, a mirror. And she stood at the center of it, equal parts scarred and sacred, offering not answers, but reckoning. She talked about race, not like an academic, but like someone who lived its quiet violence every day, who learned the code, who learned when to bite her tongue and when to sharpen it. She told the stories we all knew but rarely heard out loud. She said what most black people think in white rooms but never dare speak. And in doing so, she chipped away at the lie that we are past this, the lie that we're equal now, the lie that racism only looks like slurs and fire hoses and not job interviews, not traffic stops, not jokes told when they think you won't mind. She burned that lie down, calmly, intelligently, ruthlessly, and from the ashes. She built something else, not just comedy, not just legacy, freedom, because, in the end, that's what her story is really about. Not race, not fame, not even anger. It's about freedom, the kind that doesn't ask, that doesn't flinch, the kind you earn by refusing to disappear, by refusing to be quiet, by standing in your truth long enough for the world to see that it was never you who needed to change. Wanda Sykes told the truth, and for that, she was called angry, difficult, divisive. She wore every word like armor, because once you know who you are, the labels don't stick. She walked through fire and came out whole. She didn't wait to be accepted. She chose to be free. Now ask yourself, what have you been shrinking for? And what would it look like to stop?